Hello, my wonderful computer science students. Welcome to our lesson on impacts of program design in our Unit 3 class creation unit. If you're new here, I'm Goldie and I'm here to take you through all of the content involved in AP CSA. Now we're starting off this unit, our first lesson with talking about the impacts of program design. In the next lesson, we're going to talk about actual program design, but it's very important to start off talking about the impacts of program design and how sometimes design decisions made by programmers are going to not only affect the code, what you see in front of you, but it's going to have implications throughout our society and the way society interacts with our code. So why are we starting with this lesson? Okay, this seems a little bit different than the lessons we've done previously where we've talked about code in the Java syntax, but it's important that we start with this lesson because technology is everywhere. We're going to be talking about broad terms of technological advances in this lesson, not just Java-specific advances, okay? Because it's important to understand how technology as a whole has an impact on you and how you can be a more responsible programmer because of it. Because programming does have these real-world consequences. Every system is designed by programmers to solve problems. And while almost all programs are designed to make a positive difference, there are programs that introduce unintended negative effects. This also encourages critical thinking. Okay, when we think about our program design and we think about the consequences that our program design can have on people, it helps analyze and question how technology as a whole works behind the scenes. And this is an industry expectation. You are expected to be a responsible programmer, not just knowing the language, but using the language in a correct way, making sure that you are applying everything from copyright, that you're using AI correctly, that you are considering all of the ethical implications your program could have. All of these things are kind of wrapped up into the impacts of program design that we're going to talk about today. So we're starting with this lesson to make sure that we cover all of this topic. And there's going to be kind of a breadth of information we cover today. So I want you to get ready, settle in, and just kind of listen to some of the points that we're going to make here about program design. Okay. So first, let's talk about system reliability. Now, this is something as a programmer, even in this class, you want to make sure that you do. You want to have a program that's reliable. In the broader scheme, outside of this class, when you are coding, you're making, whether it's just anything from an app to an entire system, we want to have it be reliable. And a reliable system means that this program performs its task as expected and without failure. Now, why is that important? Of course, it's obvious you want a working program, right? But to kind of lay out why it's important, first is user trust, right? Users expect software to work correctly. And if a program fails often, people aren't going to use it, okay? Safety, of course, there are some systems where if they fail, you would be put in danger, right? Medical software, autopilot systems that we have now, failures are dangerous, okay? Some failures are just annoyances, but some can be dangerous, so we got to keep that in mind. Financial costs, fixing unreliable software after it's already been released can be very expensive. And of course, reputation, right? No one wants to use a product or use a system that is unreliable. So we want to make sure that we have a reliable system to cover all four of these points. Okay. Now, how do we improve reliability? I'm going to kind of narrow in on things that you can start doing in your own program right now in this course that in the big scheme of things is going to help improve reliability across the board, right? Which is pretty cool. Test with different inputs and conditions, right? We have test code. When I give you a problem and I lay out what you should do, how you should solve it, I give you a sample run, right? Because that's the not only expected output, but I want you to check with different inputs to make sure that you're getting that sample output, right? So if we're looking for user input, make sure that you're accounting for all different types. In this class, that looks like, okay, if you want your user to enter in an integer, what's going to happen to your program if they enter a double, right? Or what happens if you're asking your user to input a word and they input, all capital letters, whatever it may be. User input in this course is important. So you want to make sure you account for all different types. That you handle those errors properly. Now, we haven't gotten really into error handling quite yet. That's what's called exceptions handling. We are going to talk about a couple different exceptions that are going to occur in Unit 4. So we are going to kind of make our way towards that. But exceptions handling is what happens when an error does appear in your program. How are you going to handle it? Because right now, if we have an error in our program, it kind of crashes, right? And we just got to code around it. But there are ways to handle those errors properly. Okay. And the last thing is using debugging tools, right? In this class, that looks like print statements in your code, right? If you have an infinite loop somewhere, where is it, right? Use some print statements to figure out, okay, what variable isn't changing, what's staying the same, what do I got to have to change in order to make it not an infinite loop, as an example. But there's different debugging tools too, besides just adding in code. There's a partner, using your partner to help you debug, using your class, your teacher, even using AI to help you debug. All three of these things are things we do in our class right now that can help improve reliability across all systems, right? So anytime a system or a program, before it gets set to launch, you want to make sure that you're doing these things as you're developing your code to improve that reliability. Okay. Now let's switch over to talk about the social implications of program design. So this is where we're going to talk about kind of the big idea of program design. Not necessarily that we're going to be handling these implications in our course, but you got to keep them in mind for our big picture programming, okay, when we're programming. So social implications look at the way computing systems affect human interactions, relationships, and behaviors, right? So some effects are positive while others are unintendedly negative, okay? Because us as the programmers, we're so often focused on how can I make this program so that it's beneficial to someone, that I make a good program, that it's useful for them, that they like it, right? And all of those are positives. But then we also have to be thinking about how that could be spun into a negative, okay? We also have to talk about this ethical implications of computing systems. So we need to look at the moral considerations of using technology in a fair and responsible way. Okay, so that kind of goes hand in hand with the negatives. Some negatives are very obviously negative, right? You're stealing money, right? Stealing money is obviously negative, right? Ethically, though, is stealing money from billionaires, negative? There's a moral argument to be made there. Not that I'm advocating for that, but as an example, right? There are also the ethical side of social implications too. Okay, so not only you as a programmer, this doesn't just fall on you as the programmer. This does fall on companies in general, and also users to make decisions to make sure that they're using things in an ethical way. But it starts with you as the programmer who is making the program, who is designing it, okay? So let's talk about some positives. What are some positives that can come out of your program design, right? The first thing, when you think of an app, right, think of social media. Now, social media, it fosters connection and communication, right? It's a great way to communicate and connect with people from not only in your everyday lives, but people who you would never meet normally, right? That's a positive. It gives us access to information, again, that you normally wouldn't have in your day-to-day life. Social media provides. It can be convenient and it can increase productivity as well, depending on how you use it, again. And it also provides assistive technology, right? So like if you think of apps on iPods, I'm dating myself, iPads, apps on iPads, to help people who have speech impairments speak, who might not be able to speak, people who might not be able to hear. It lets them see, with subtitles, right? There's so many positives that technology can provide. But there's also the negative sides, right? We have a lot of privacy issues going on right now with program designs where we want to use the data that the user gives us. We want to use it in a fair way, but we also have to maintain privacy. Mental health effects, okay, social media, again, being kind of a number one example of that. Yes, you have connection, you have communication, but constant connection, constant communication does have a mental health effect. Addiction and distraction, some of you know better than anyone how we can get addicted to screens and how it does take away from the everyday life because of that. And then, of course, misinformation and bias, right? That's kind of becoming a little rampant now that everyone has a platform on social media. We do have to be aware that not everyone needs a platform on social media when they're spreading misinformation and bias. Okay, so just kind of, again, the big pictures to keep in mind as we're looking at developing technological solutions to issues we are facing. Okay, so here's the key ethical questions in computing and an example that kind of goes with it. Okay, like we talk about data privacy, right? Should companies be allowed to track and sell your personal data, right? They track your personal data because they need it to, whether it's provide you with a service of some kind or give you information of some kind based on your personal data. They need it, but then once they have it, are they allowed to do whatever they want with it? Okay, so this is an issue we're facing right now, an ethical issue. You gave it to them. Are they allowed to do what they want with it? Hacking and cybersecurity, right? Is hacking ever justified? Like exposing corruption. Of course, you have, what they call the white hat hackers, that take down the bad guys. Okay. But besides that, what about hacking like student loans right now, right? Outrageous. Some people are saying, where are all the hackers, that can just hack in and erase all student loan debt? And that would help so many people if all of their debt was erased, right? Is that ethical or though? Because it's helping people, but is it hurting in an unintended way? Okay. Bias in AI, right? So you hear, AI is everywhere now. So a lot of the ethical questions come up around AI usage as well. Like, should AI hiring tools decide who should get a job if they sometimes favor certain groups, right? Like, there was some, I wish I had the source for you, so you might have to take my word for this, but there was an article posted not long ago about how certain job sites that shall remain unnamed use AI to scan resumes, and what they found was that the AI started favoring resumes that sounded more masculine because they were hiring for like a tech position essentially, and it started to favor more masculine sounding applications because it just fit the description of the tech job better. So that's favoring males over females, and should that be allowed? Okay. Digital copyright and piracy. So this has been ongoing for years and years, right? Downloading music or movies illegally, really a big deal, right? Especially if you're downloading for personal use, right? Like if I have all of these streaming services, I'm paying so much money, but I just want to watch this one movie. Is it a big deal if I just download that movie illegally when I'm already paying for so much, right? So issues like that, key ethical questions that we don't have laws for. And that for a lot of these ethical issues, you could have a pros and a cons list, right? And you can kind of go back and forth debating on the pros and cons for all of these. But what it comes down to is you as a programmer, when you are designing something, you have to make sure that you take these into account and do your best to program something that aligns not only with your own values, but with your company's values too. Whoever you are working for, you will have to take their morals and beliefs into account as well. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about digital copyright, because that kind of goes hand in hand with making sure that we are ethically coding. So there are some terms I'm going to introduce here kind of as vocab terms, but you probably have heard these terms before out and about, but I just kind of want to formally tell you what they are here. So when you hear something about open source code, so open source code means it's code that's freely available for anyone to use and anyone to modify as well. So a lot of programming languages are open source code, meaning anyone can contribute to the API and provide code for other people. And then people can also make changes to it as well. When we talk about proprietary code, that means that it's code that's owned by a company or individual, and it requires permission and payment to use. An example would be like Microsoft Windows, right? Like you have to, in order to use any sort of code for Microsoft, you have to be actually employed by them or have permission to use their code, okay? If we talk about a copyright violation, that's when you use code, specifically code in the coding world, code without permission, or plagiarism is if you were to claim someone else's code as your own, right? Because it's not necessarily wrong to use other people's code, but you have to make sure that one, you're allowed to do so, and two, that you correctly source it. Now, in this class so far, I've told you, make your own code. Don't use someone else's code. And a big part of that is because we are learning how to code. And I believe it's very important that when we learn how to code, we do so on our own. We can look at other people's work as examples of how things can be done, but we shouldn't just directly copy and paste someone else's code as we are learning. Now, when you reach a certain level of programmer, using other people's code, like other people's classes or other people's code segments, it can save you so much time, and it's actually encouraged in the programming world in certain situations. But again, you have to make sure that it's open sourced in a way that the people are letting you use it. They are allowing you to use their code freely for whatever reason, and that you're sourcing them still. Even though it's free to use, it's still ethically sound to make sure that you give them credit, okay? Which leads us into a discussion of AI, which we have had a lot of in this course when it comes to using AI to design a program. So I'm going to speak directly to students in AP CSA here. Now, using AI to design a program when you're in college or when you're in the industry, it's going to look a lot different, and you're going to have to, people are coming out with companies, colleges, even us in this course. We're coming out with guidelines of how to use AI ethically and practically in our courses. So using AI to design a program in here. When you are looking at designing code, right? Uses that will enhance learning is using AI to explore different approaches, the differences between the approaches to solving a programming problem, right? Or getting suggestions for an algorithm design and data structure selection. So these two practices are going to enhance your learning when you are in this course, okay? What will not enhance your learning, what will in fact undermine it, is using AI-generated code without analyzing it, okay? Or accepting the suggestions without considering alternative approaches, okay? So use AI to kind of explore differences, how can I code this? What's another way to code this, right? But don't just accept the way that they code it and without understanding it, right? You have to be able to understand the processes that go into making that code. Leading into developing code. You can definitely use AI for syntax assistance, right? If you've come across something that you're like, I don't even know what that keyword means, or I don't know what this structure means, use AI, right? Learning coding concepts, right? If you're interested in what an enum is or an abstract class, you can definitely learn these coding concepts from AI, especially if we don't cover it in class, right? And you can also get help debugging specific errors. If you run your program and it has an error, an exception thrown that you've never heard of before, ask AI, what does it mean? Hey, I got this. What does it mean? Okay. Don't just copy AI generated code without understanding how it works. And if you use AI to complete homework without learning the concepts, that will just make sure that you never learn the concepts, right? It is so important to take ownership of your own learning when you are going through a course and say, hey, I'm committed to learning this and understanding this. And yeah, I'll use AI to help me along the way, but AI is not going to do my thinking for me, okay? And don't rely on it for all programming tasks. If I were to give you a homework assignment, yeah, AI is nice to kind of help out and help some of these things to enhance your learning, but the idea is that you should be able to do it without AI. And if you feel like you can't do it without AI, that is a problem. Okay. And even if it takes longer to do it without AI, you still should be able to do it. AI just helps move quicker and helps enhance your learning. Okay. Last practice, I think it's the last practice, is analyzing code. Okay. To enhance learning, you use AI to help you understand, again, unfamiliar code, getting explanation of how code works and how the execution flows. This is very important too if you run into examples online and you're just like, wow, I don't know what this does at all. Okay. AI can be used to help break that down. But if you use AI to bypass your understanding, you are doing yourself a huge disservice. And don't rely solely on AI for debugging skills. Like we said earlier, debugging by adding print line statements, by talking with a partner, those are so useful debugging skills. You shouldn't just use AI for those. Okay. So what does this mean? Your future as a programmer moving from this class forward. We want to make sure you are ethically programming, which means writing fair, unbiased code, respecting user privacy, and preventing harm in every way that you are able to prevent harm. Okay? Even as users of these programs and as these apps, be mindful of what you share online. Think critically about what you read and call out any unethical practices when you see them. Again, a lot of those unethical things we were talking about, there's debates on both sides. So you have to decide where your heart lies on that and align it to that. Okay, so call out unethical practices when you see them, because that's only going to help make not only programming better, but just the internet as a whole better, right? So that kind of wraps up this lesson on the impacts of program design. I know we didn't even talk about any sort of syntax or Java data structures. So this is all setting the stage for designing ethical programs. So in the next lesson, that is when we are going to focus on program design in the Java framework. Okay, so if you stuck with me for this long, I appreciate that. Go ahead and like this video, subscribe to my YouTube channel for more great CSA content. And until then, I will see you in the next video.